What is the purpose of relationships? All relationships. All relationships are to help us grow as a soul, and let me explain what I mean. Our soul has a consciousness, and it sends a fractal of its consciousness down into a physical body, in this case, here on Earth. And the only goal of that soul is to gather lessons and experiences, because the soul has a plan or a roadmap on where it wants to go, and it uses various lifetimes to help it achieve the goal of where it wants to end up. So you might say the soul is like a collector of experiences and lessons. Now, we don't learn all of the lessons in every single lifetime because we have something called an ego or a personality. And that ego has been given something called free will. And because of free will, we as the consciousness can decide if we want to listen and obey and follow the higher self, which is the voice of our soul, or if we want to follow the whims and voice of our ego, keeping in mind that the ego is the voice of all kinds of things we've picked up in this lifetime. It's also something left over from past lives. It could be something left over from our ancestors. Could be beliefs and traumas that our soul has been carrying. Influences in this lifetime, like our parents, friends, the media, society, and the collective conscious. So there are a lot of things that make up the personality or the ego. And it's always our free will choice which voice we're going to listen to. Now, as you can imagine, one voice brings a little bit more struggle and pain with it than the other, and that would be listening to the voice of the ego. Because the ego is about strife and division and separation, judgment, you versus me. Whereas the higher self has a much higher perspective, a perspective from love, which is the only thing that's real. Everything about the ego, all its beliefs and traumas and dramas, that's all illusory. So the more we listen to the ego voice, the more we are participating in the illusion versus truth if we listen to and follow our higher self. So how do relationships fit into all of this? Relationships are a way for us to help unpack all of those things that we're carrying around in our personality. It's like if we have this suitcase and we just pack stuff in it throughout our life, including past lives, like I said, and stuff from our ancestors or maybe from the collective conscious. Let me give you an example. One of the main lessons that people have in this lifetime is learning how to truly love themselves. Not depending on others living in this illusion to give you something they can't possibly give you because they're living in the illusion. So here we are looking for something real, which is love, in people who are caught up and entangled in the illusion. So learning self-love is being able to see through this and knowing that we are the source of love. Our divine nature is the very God nature of love. So we don't need to look at any illusory person outside of us for that. But when we're caught up in the illusion and listening to the ego or the personality, it's hard to realize this. So if your soul maybe wants you to really get the lesson of self-love, might have given you some abusive parents, some narcissistic parents maybe, and maybe even a narcissistic partner or two or three. All in an effort to show you, really show you up close and personal, you will not receive love from anyone outside of you. But instead of getting the message, sometimes we tend to stay stuck in those things. And of course, I'm talking once you get into adulthood. And we wonder, why can't this person be different? Why are they treating me like this? Why can't they be nice to me? Why can't they stop abusing me? Without realizing that's not their role. This relationship was meant to show you you can't get love outside of you. It's meant to drive you inward to the true source of love, that wellspring of love that can only be found in your divine God source nature. And I had a recent higher self hypnosis session where my client dealt with that very thing. And her higher self told her she did the ultimate act of self-love by finally leaving her narcissistic, abusive husband after 25 years of marriage. She had finally had enough and decided to put herself first. Now, no one made her stay there. She was afraid to leave him prior to that. She didn't want to split up her family. So she chose to learn her lesson, again, up close and personal, through pain and suffering. But did it drive her closer to self-love? Her higher self said it absolutely did. Could she have realized this, shortened her lesson, and left years earlier? Of course she could have. But her fears and her beliefs and society around her, of her parents not wanting her to get a divorce, kept her tethered. But that was a choice she made with her free will. Now, don't come at me and say, well, some people just can't or they don't have a choice. But unless someone's holding a gun to your head, you always have a choice. It may not be easy, but there's always a choice. And I can speak from personal experience in this. So that's just one example of how relationships help us to learn our lessons, to unpack those things that we're carrying in that suitcase that we just keep dragging around with us. And this is with all relationships. They're all a method to show us what it is that's unhealed in us that needs our attention. And how does it appear to us? It appears as triggers. Anything that brings up old feelings, hurt feelings, pain, trauma. Anything that angers us, makes us feel impatient or betrayed or abandoned or rejected. These types of emotions that are in the suitcase are in there from previous relationships. They normally aren't just appearing now as an adult. The person, the relationship in front of you is the one that's triggering their remembrance, bringing it up to the surface so that it can be dealt with. That's what your soul wants to happen. It wants to clean out that suitcase. Because if you don't, you're just going to carry it to the next life and the next life and the next life. And then I hear in some of my higher self-hypnosis sessions, my clients telling me, my soul feels tired. Well, that would explain why. Because we keep carrying that suitcase around and trying to learn our lessons again and again and again, but then choosing again to listen to the ego and not that still small voice. And you can do this, and you can feel sorry for yourself, feel tired, feel like your soul is tired, or you can make a change and try to learn what it means and what it's like to listen to the voice of your soul, to that higher self voice. Some people call it the voice of the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it. It's that God voice that's always there leading and guiding you, if you just take the time to learn how to listen to it. I have a lot of videos out here on how do you connect to your higher self? How do you listen to that voice? As well as a course on my website called Connecting to Your Higher Self. It was a 4-week course I did on how do you do that? How do you distinguish between the voice of your ego and the voice of your higher self? Or you can just keep doing what you're doing and wonder why you keep getting the same results or very minor changes in your life. Again, it all comes down to free will. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. They're all just experiences. So what about you? What are some relationships you have in your life? And how do you feel, if you take an inventory of it, that they are teaching you and helping you to unpack the suitcase of emotions and traumas and pains that you might be carrying around? What beliefs are you carrying around that are impacting your life that you'd like to get rid of? Doing an honest inventory of what's in your suitcase and looking at the relationships or the teachers in your life is a great first step in making change in your life.